Live from Miami, Florida, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to Patriots Perspective with Christi Tasker. Your news behind the government's facade. Don't fall victim to propaganda or spend another 30 days in the tech gulag. Turn off your tell-lie vision and just listen. Hear the most mind-opening hours of your life as we interview whistleblowers and real patriots for uncensored truth. The Commie News Network and Fake Book cannot control the power of Jesus Christ. Therefore, they have no power over us. There aren't enough Vegas strippers to fake check what's coming. Put in your earphones and avoid the tech tyrants. Subscribe to patriotsperspective.com now and see the evidence and action items to help you take back your God-given rights, government, and expose Satan and his demons taking up residence in your community. Be sure to hit the like or rumble button and comment to tell us where you're holding the line.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Patriots Perspective. My name is Christi Tasker. I am the propaganda destructor and the government gangster disruptor. And today I have with me an amazing guest. He is the uranium whistleblower. He knows all about the Clintons. He knows all about the FBI lies. And today I have with me the amazing, the one and only Nate Cain. Nate, welcome to Patriots Perspective. And it's so good to finally have you on my show after meeting you here in Miami. So welcome, sir.
Christi, thank you for having me.
Well, listen, today my audience probably doesn't really know a lot about you. And I want to give them, the 10,000 foot view. I'm sure that you've done 1,000 of their interviews where you've dove in and they can hear the details. But I also want them to know about you, where they can find your long format interviews, and what's actually going on right now. I want your take on what's going on within our government right now, considering you are one of the biggest whistleblowers of our modern day time.
Sure. So one thing that a lot of people probably may not have heard about me is because for the longest time I went under a code name and I had anonymity. I actually was a whistleblower under the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act, and I brought over 458 pages of classified documents out of the FBI and to the Department of Justice IG, Michael Horowitz. Michael Horowitz went out of his way to ensure that I could get those documents reviewed. He gave it a credibility rating of a national security matter of urgent concern. And then I was given permission to take those documents to both the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. So a lot of people have probably heard of the other Uranium One whistleblower, which was Mr. Campbell. He was a FBI informant, but I was somebody working inside the FBI and witnessed the FBI covering up all of Hillary Clinton's crimes related to Uranium One, but also multiple cases of money laundering, public corruption, securities and exchange fraud, and terrorism financing. So what is interesting today is we are seeing being uncovered before our eyes some of the very things that I had seen with the Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton, and money that was being laundered through NGOs and charities. And now, we're finding out that USAID, of course, was being used as a front to take our tax dollars, send it to NGOs, and then work that money back through multiple other charities and NGOs into, the hands of Democrats and the media. And Clinton Foundation is listed in those documents as well, and a whole lot of other organizations that are left wing. So clearly, the FBI not doing anything about what they saw before allowed this stuff to continue on happening. And we're probably looking at, at least $1 trillion lost of the U.S. taxpayers' money. And so I am so grateful and glad to see that Elon Musk is uncovering this and exposing it, because it's about time that it gets exposed in a very public way.
Yes, sir. So let me ask you, because the people that are sitting at home, they're thinking, like, number one, how did this start? Americans are going on with their daily lives. They're not really, they want to pay their taxes. They want to pay their fair share. They want to get their government services. And then they have such a hard time believing that their government can do something this big in the trillions and trillions of dollars. And then oftentimes what I see is either they want to either overbelieve a whistleblower, get the information incorrect to make you look really dumb, or they want to completely stick their head under the rug and pretend like it's just not happening and this just can't be because it's just too big and it's just too much to deal with and we should just move on with our lives. And why do people like you and I care? Why did you, risk losing your job, losing your life, putting your family on the line to expose the situation? So let's start with, like, how did you first uncover it?
Sure.
And what did you, what was the conversation like with your wife when you, found this? This is, because I know that's got to be a hard one.
Yeah. Well, so in 2016 is when I went to work for the FBI, and it was about 2017 that I uncovered this plot by the FBI to cover up Hillary Clinton's crimes. At first, I had overheard a rumor, and by one of my coworkers that they had seen some transcripts of a conversation that happened on the seventh floor. So these are like senior level FBI personnel, director types, and in this conversation they were discussing investigations that were ongoing, and that's investigations plural. But they had said that they were afraid that she was going to be president, and so they were going to shut down the investigation. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I had to go look. I had access to the system. I've held a clearance for 27 years. I went in, looked inside their databases, and I found evidence that they were, in fact, investigating her. 3 separate field offices, and you had multiple investigations. And each one of these investigations had a separate case number, had different FBI agents assigned to it. So I thought, okay, well, they are investigator, and this rumor about them shutting things down is just that, nothing more than a rumor. So I sat on it, and I didn't do anything for several months until James Comey came out in front of the J. Edgar Hoover building, and it was there that he basically, gave this press conference where he laid out all of the classified emails that were found on Hillary Clinton's private email server that was in the bathroom basement of her home, which is illegal. And she was conducting government official business on that so that she could avoid FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, and avoid being subpoenaed for documents and emails and things like that. So when I saw this, and he's laying out all of these details, and he basically is making the case for something that I've known about for a very long time in my career, which is the Espionage Act. You don't have to, it doesn't even have to be intentional. If you mishandle classified information, and then that is considered a Espionage Act violation. So I was expecting the next words out of Comey's mouth to be, and so today I'm announcing we're indicting Hillary Clinton. But no, instead what he said was that no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case against Hillary Clinton over her mishandling of classified information. What was unique was we're not talking about just some confidential or even secret information. No, there was stuff that was above top secret that was found on her email server. He mentioned in that interview, and anybody can go back and look at it, that there were 7 email chains that had special access programs. Now, special access programs are compartmentalized information. This is usually information that can cause grave danger to the United States or to personnel that are on the ground. So this is the kind of stuff that gets people killed. And yet this was found on her email server. Additionally, Comey announced in that interview that they had evidence that foreign adversaries had accessed that server. So immediately, my warning bells went off.
Will you repeat that again? They had accessed this server?
Foreign adversaries had hacked into that server or had accessed that server. And immediately, my warning bells went off. I contacted some buddies of mine that I used to work with at NSA, and talked to them, said, hey, did you hear about this? Did you hear about this interview, or that this press conference that Comey gave, I said, this email server sounds to me like it was a Dropbox, that this was intentionally a place to drop classified files that foreign adversaries, could log into and get access to, and then you have plausible deniability. And the thing is that once I saw this, and he says, we're not going to prosecute her, mind you, at that time, you had a submariner who was, I think, like a low-level guy, took a picture of his hot rack on a submarine, and there's nothing dangerous to national security about the sleeping quarters on a submarine. But he took a picture, and that was illegal, and it violated the UCMJ's policies, and so he was thrown in jail for taking a picture of an unclassified space. But the mere fact that he took a picture on the submarine, it ended up getting him thrown in jail. So that gets somebody thrown in jail for months, but Hillary Clinton walks, without even a slap on the wrist. It was ridiculous. And so I realized at that point that the likelihood that they were going to cover things up was likely true. And then what confirmed that for me was, as Comey was giving this speech, I could hear my boss, basically my unit chief at the FBI, cussing and screaming in his office where he had the TV on, watching this press conference. And I walked in there and I said, "Hey, Chuck, what's going on?" And I said, what do you think's going on here? And he says, "Look, the FBI does not make determinations for indictments. They only investigate. That is our sole job, is to investigate. It is the DOJ's job to indict and make that determination." And I said to him, because I was still somewhat naive at this time, still thinking that maybe there was something else, some greater plot that the FBI had. Maybe they were going to bring, other charges, and they didn't want to, bring that out at that moment. And so I asked Chuck, I said, do you think that they're not going to charge her on this because they're planning on bringing something bigger? Because I knew about these investigations that were going on. No, they're going to cover this up. And so at that moment, I walked out of his office and I sat down at my desk, and I had a very difficult moment of thinking about whether I wanted to just keep my mouth shut and turn a blind eye and continue making the most money I'd ever made in my life on a contract that was easy and I got along with people, or whether I wanted to basically do the right thing, blow the whistle, and possibly destroy my career, put my life, my freedom, and everything else in jeopardy. And it didn't take long for me to make that decision, because I'm a Christian. And I know that someday I'm going to stand before my God. And in James chapter 4, I think it's verse 17, it says that he that knows the good that he ought to do and does not do it, it is sin for him. And so for me, it's not just about not doing evil, but it's also about doing good when you have the power to do good. And so I made a very difficult decision that day to go ahead and blow the whistle. Now, I couldn't do it immediately because I had a very big problem, and that is that everybody in my chain of command was involved, at least at the highest levels. Comey was involved. Rod Rosenstein, the deputy DA or attorney general, was involved. You had the inspector general for the intelligence community, Michael Atkinson, was involved. You had Robert Mueller, the newly appointed special counsel against Trump. He was involved because all of them had been involved in the investigation into Uranium One, which was one of the main money laundering issues that was being looked at by the FBI. And so I had a tough choice. So I did my research, found that the easiest way for me to do this was, and to do it legally, was to go directly to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. And so I reached out through another person to Devin Nunes, and we set up a clandestine meeting where I initially gave my first disclosure directly to a guy by the name of George Pappas, who was a senior staffer to Devin Nunes at the time. Now, you asked about my wife.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
That night, I came home, the night of that speech. I came home and I was laying in bed, and my wife, I was not my normal talkative self, and my wife could tell something was up. And she asked me, "What's up with you? What's going on?" And I told her, I said, "Look, I think I'm going to have to blow the whistle on the FBI." And she sat up in bed and said, "What?" And her first words to me were, "Why does it have to be you?" And and it's a good question, because there's a lot of FBI employees there. I was just a contractor, and I was not an FBI employee. I had very little protection. When you are a contractor, the Whistleblower Protection Act does not apply to you, and that act, while it does prevent reprisal, the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act does not. And as a contractor, the only way that I could go legally was to utilize the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act. But the problem that I had is the guy that I normally would go through, which would be the Intelligence Community Inspector General. He was part of the plot. And you'll probably remember that Michael Atkinson was the guy who set up Trump by changing the rules so that the Ukraine phone call could be used against Trump to bring a national security matter public to the Congress. And that was all arranged and plotted, I believe, by Michael Atkinson with an intent to try to foil Trump's presidency. So I was in a pretty difficult situation, but my wife asked me, "Why does it have to be you?" And I told her, I said, "If not me, then who's going to do this?" Certainly thousands of people had probably seen the documents that I'd seen, and yet nobody was going to say anything. Nobody wanted to risk their pensions. Nobody wanted to risk their life. I mean, this is Hillary Clinton we're talking about. But I told her, I said, "What if God put me in this position at the FBI for this purpose, and I fail to do what he put me there to do?" And she looked at me and she said, "Well, you do realize this is going to change everything. This is going to have an impact on your family. It's going to have an impact on your kids. It's going to have an impact on us, on probably our future and our ability to, your ability to work at the government." And I told her, I said, "I understand that." And she was wanting me to count the cost. And so I told her then, I said, "Look, I believe I've got to do this." And she said, "Well, if you feel that God's called you to do this, then I'm going to stand by you. You got to do it." And it was like I said, it was a very tough decision, but I went ahead and made plans. And so the first meeting I had was with George Pappas. A friend of mine drove up from South Carolina, and he picked me up and then picked up George Pappas. And then we drove around the Capitol, and I handed him a thumb drive with most of the documents that I brought out. And I debriefed him basically for 3 hours. After which he asked me specifically if there was more information on Uranium One. And there was only a few documents that I had on that, because like I said, it ran the scope of a lot of different money laundering schemes. There was some terrorism financing stuff that was in there, where money was coming out of the Clinton Foundation in regular payments that were paying off the head spokesman for the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And this was all right in the run-up to the Arab Spring. You had some securities and exchange fraud and other things like that. But he asked me specifically about an intelligence report, and I did not have that. So at that point, he asked if I'd be willing to go back in and get that report, because they had requested it. They had word, probably from the other whistleblower, about that document, this intelligence report. And he asked if I would go and get it. And so reluctantly, I told him yes. And so he gave me a means of contacting him. I asked him, I said, "Do you want me to call you?" And he said, "Absolutely not." He told me at that time that he believed that the IPSI had good reason to believe that they were being spied on by the FBI. And he was right. Now, you think about that for a minute. This is the Congressional Committee, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, that is supposed to have oversight over the FBI, over their use of things like FISA and surveillance tools and things like that, surveillance authorities, Section 702. But it turns out that the FBI was using these tools, and the CIA, by the way, that got released in a document by Chuck Grassley, that the CIA was spying on the intelligence committees to identify whistleblowers. But that's what these guys have been up against. And so I went back in. I found the document that he was looking for. It was a pretty lengthy intelligence report that laid out all of the Russian players that were involved in a bribery and kickback scheme to infiltrate the U.S. uranium supply chain. And it had all of their, these people that were involved. It had the, all of the information about what they were doing. And the company involved was a company by the name of Rosatom. And Rosatom was a Russian energy company that was clearly controlled by the Russian state. And so they were the company that was given permission to buy Uranium One, a Canadian mining firm that mined 20% of U.S. uranium. The problem is that Hillary Clinton was the chairman of the CFIUS committee, which is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S. And thus, she had knowledge. Robert Mueller had knowledge because he was the FBI director at the time. The deputy director at the time was Comey. The head of the public corruption unit at the time was Michael Atkinson. And the investigative U.S. attorney involved was Rod Rosenstein. And yet it had been several years and nothing had happened. Nobody had gone to jail. Nobody had been arrested. They basically covered it over and they never brought charges. Interestingly enough, after I went public, then all of a sudden they had to scramble to, cover up their information that they had been investigating, for like 9 years. And they ended up closing up that case by bringing charges against the man who was the owner of that company, 10X. So it was a pretty big scandal.
But they still never got Clinton during that. Like they just let her go during that. So just as a reminder to everyone,
Yeah, and not only that, but the only person who paid, dearly for all of that was me and my family. I went to all this trouble to go. So after I came out of the FBI with that second document, I got cut off from comms by Devin Nunes people. So I had to go and find an attorney and hire an attorney to help me go through something that had never been done before, which was to utilize the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act. But instead of with the ICIG, we went to the DOJ IG, Michael Horowitz. And I was the first person ever to utilize that to blow the whistle. So Michael Horowitz, he did his job and he made sure that I was able to use a code name and protect my identity the whole time. We went through it. Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General at the time, did not do his job. In fact, he completely ignored breaking the law. He completely ignored his responsibility to review and give a credibility rating to my whistleblower complaint. It was supposed to be done within 9 days. Did not happen. We went, I think it was, we were over a month past due. I went to, my lawyer reached out to the DOJ's IG's office. And that's when we found out that because Jeff Sessions had recused himself from all things Russia, he had refused to even look at the documents. So they were sitting on his desk for over a month. And so Horowitz offered to give it a credibility rating himself, which we gladly accepted. He went and logged in to the FBI's network. He could see and verify by serial number all of these documents were, in fact, original documents from the FBI, legitimate serialized documents, evidence documents. And at which point he ended up then, telling us that we had permission to go and take these documents to both the House and Senate Intel committees. I offered to give him the thumb drive at that time. He said no. He said he wanted me to print it out. And he said I was able and authorized to maintain the thumb drive just in case these two committees did nothing with this information. That's how important he thought it was. He says, then I could take that information to, the Senate Intel or the Senate Judiciary or something like that. And so we ended up reaching out to the House and spoke to a guy by the name of Cordon Hull, who was the liaison at the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, sent the documents over to him. We talked to him first and told him, my lawyer, of course, is doing the talking, told him what this was about, they asked if we would be willing, or if I would be willing to testify, in which case I said no, because I knew that the moment I testified, the Democrats would leak my name out and it would put a target on my back. And we were talking about Russian intelligence agents and Hillary Clinton and leadership, senior leadership at the FBI. I didn't want my name anywhere near this. That was a death sentence. And I ended up.
So were you still going to work at the FBI in the process? Were you still going to work there? Like, I mean, I know this may be a silly question, but I want to make sure that the public understands.
So the first disclosure, yes. But after I made that first disclosure and he asked me to go back in and get this intelligence report, I walked out on my last day. So I had that thumb drive and got basically left twisting in the wind with a classified thumb drive. And at that point, that's when I had to hire a lawyer and go meet. I basically went home and put it in my safe, which is not legal, but I had no other option. And so that's when we contacted the Justice Department IG and started that process. That process took a year. So it had been a year that I had been out of the FBI by the time that, we finally finished our disclosure. But Horowitz actually, when we went to let me go back for a minute. When we went to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and they asked me to testify, and I told them that I did not want to testify, they said, well, then we're not going to take your documents from you. Even though these documents had already been given a credibility rating, they refused to take them. So at that point, we went back to Horowitz, and Horowitz was completely shocked. And he said, look, ask them if they will take these documents if I deliver them. So we did, and they agreed. And so he delivered it to both the House and the Senate Intel committees. We later found out the Senate Intel Committee never received the documents, that whoever the liaison was over there basically shoved them in a drawer, and they never even made it to the committee, which is also another breakdown in the whole whistleblower process. But what was worse was once we got the documents to him, we confirmed with Cordon Hull that these were valuable documents to their ongoing investigations into Hillary Clinton's crimes. And at that point, I thought I was done. And we had I think it was maybe about 4 months, and then there was an election, and I think the election had already happened, but it was about 4 months, and no, it must have been right after that. So, because there was the election, then you had a period of time that passed, and then the House took control of the Democrats took control of the House. And so the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence removed Devin Nunes as the chair, and Adam Schiff became the chair. 1 month after that, I was raided by the FBI, and 16 agents showed up at my house. They turned my house, upside down, collected all of my electronics, put my family through hell. And then when the agent in charge violated my rights, and I had already told him that I had a lawyer, and he contacted me anyways and pressured me to give him the passwords to my government computer, which that would have been illegal because I had signed, that's not my equipment. I told him, I gave him the contact information of who he could call to get access. He then threatened me. And at that point I said, I don't wish to say anything further to you without my lawyer. And then they decided to retaliate by leaking my name to the New York Times. And so at that point, my name went public for the first time. And after that, of course, we had media people in our yard. We had somebody that went and basically, videotaped me in my car, driving up to my driveway with my license plate number revealed and everything. Had somebody, telling people where I lived. I had death threats. Eventually, I was poisoned twice, and I had the lug nuts on my vehicle loosened right before we had a long trip. I also know that I was surveilled illegally by the FBI for 2 years after it came out that I was a whistleblower. See, what a lot of people don't know is the signals that identify when you're being surveilled. But when I worked for NSA, I was read onto the FISA program, to Section 702, to all of that, to intelligence authorities. And so I knew when I was being spied on. I could tell. I found their tools on my phone. And so it was a really horrifying situation that honestly no American patriot or whistleblower should ever have to go through. But I did, and thank God I survived it. The Lord was with me, and I'm still here today.
Awesome. Well, I mean, first of all, we thank you for, even the people who didn't realize what actually occurred with your testimony. And even though things were not done properly with it, the last time I saw you was at the Reawaken tour here in Miami, and you were running for West Virginia. Is that right?
Yes.
running for
I was running for U.S. Congress. Yep. I lost my primary, and which was sad, but at the same time, I'm grateful for the opportunity to run because I met so many wonderful people all over this state. And even though I'm no longer running for office, I'm now still very much engaged in trying to help people and trying to bring awareness to a lot of these issues that were brought up to me during the campaign. And I've since started my own podcast. It's called The Raising Cain Show. And people can find it by going to theraisingcainshow.com. But I also host a talk radio show called Unleash the Political News Hour on America Out Loud Talk Radio. On Tuesdays, I'm the host for that show. And I've been doing a lot of stuff with Substack as well, and posting articles and things I'm writing in there. And people can find that at mcpota.substack.com. mcpota was my code name as a whistleblower, and actually has a pretty funny meaning. My lawyer, who was a Cuban dissident who had fled to America at like age 14, hated the communists, he chose the name MC Pota, and I was like, when I got my official documents from the IG's office, it says MC Pota, and I'm like, what is this? And I said, you couldn't pick a cooler name than that, And he goes, oh, you like it. And I go, well, what does it mean? He says, making communists pay out the ass.
Oh, so, I like it.
So that is the code name, and I've owned that, and I love that name. So, if there's one thing that I can't stand, it's communism. I see it as a threat to the world. And so I'm happy to, have done my part, at least to try and stop corruption and, this money laundering schemes that, have continued on. Now, fortunately, Trump won, and because of it, he won with a mandate. Now we're seeing Elon Musk is doing his job with DOGE, and they are uncovering massive amounts of money laundering and corruption and waste and fraud. And I think it's all wonderful. And I think that we're going to see justice finally. So I am looking forward.
I was about to ask you, have you reached out to Elon to see if there's a means to hire you and be a part of the DOGE system? Because I would love to see you, somebody like yourself who's uncovered other things, to be a part of that system, so that you could go in and, considering you've already put your life on the line, you've kind of proven that you will go above and beyond the call of duty. I would think he would be a guy that, would be very open to you coming.
I have reached out. The only way I know how to reach out is through, there was a DOGE employment website, and I submitted my resume. It's hard work. It's long hours, and they tell you that right on the page. I don't care. I would be happy to serve my country again, especially with the knowledge that I have of where a lot of these programs, are essentially funneling money. That I may not have those documents when the FBI raided me. They took the thumb drive along with everything that, all of my electronics, but I still have up here, a lot of knowledge of how they do it. And how they hide stuff, and I would absolutely love to do that. Plus, my background is in cybersecurity and cyber forensics, and so I've got a pretty good knowledge, a lot of that sort of thing. What I would like to see, happen is I want to see the Department of Justice bring charges. I think that's the next step, and I think Pam Bondi is the woman to do it. I think that Trump chose wisely in picking her. And I think once we get Kash Patel in there with the FBI, I think he will do a good job of cleaning it up. So we just need to get him confirmed. So I'm looking forward seeing, what God is going to do, because I do believe that justice is coming this year.
Well, I definitely want to make sure that my audience goes through, make sure that you are mentioning at Nate Cain for WV on all of your posts for whatever position. I'm curious, audience, what you think, which position you would like to see him in. Would you like to see him back at the FBI with cash, or would you like to see him breaking down some information with DOGE and helping Elon? Because, I mean, I could kind of see you in both places, to be honest with you, or a space in between, Nate. So, but we definitely need you somewhere. So earlier, because I know that our audience must be wondering, you mentioned that there is a way for people to tell if their phone is being listened in on, if there's a tracker or anything. Is there anything that you could mention regarding that, where the average person, because a lot of times, calls will get dropped. People feel like that they're being listened in on. Like even my phone itself, like Apple can't figure out half the time, like what's going on or why these contacts are showing up as vacant. No, they need to wipe off your 40,000 contacts, because no one person could possibly have 40,000 contacts other than myself. So do you have any advice for the average Joe?
For the average Joe, I have to be careful about what I say. I can't, give away certain things that I know, but what I will say is this, is if your phone is acting and behaving in a way that doesn't make sense, you're hearing echoes, you're, getting clicks, you're seeing your phone rebooting on its own, or you're getting calls and nobody's on the other line, anything that's out of the ordinary should be suspicious. And it's always a good idea to make sure that your phone is updated with the latest security. Make sure that you're patching your phone, because one of the ways that people can access phones is through exploits, and that's something that you want to make sure your phone has the latest security features. But the other thing that I would say is that it's always a good idea, if your phone's acting and behaving weirdly, reboot it. And if that doesn't fix the problem, consider a master reset, which would reset your phone back to the original software. What I will say is that in my case, I found I had there's tools that I have access to because of my background in cyber. One is called a packet sniffer, and I was able to put a packet sniffer
Repeat
on
that
my
again, because
phone.
of course it glitched out. Okay. Repeat.
Oh, sorry. It's called a
packet
sniffer.
Packet sniffer.
And it captures the data packets, and you can then examine those packets. It's pretty complicated, but I was able to examine those packets that were leaving my phone on a regular basis. And I also had another app that was monitoring my microphone to see that my microphone was being turned on and off by certain programs. And so I was able to determine, based on that, what program was likely compromised on my phone, that was basically had been hijacked and was being used to turn on my microphone to listen to my conversations. And obviously, they also have access to your text messages and everything else. I mean, everybody knows that. They're not supposed to be utilizing, by the way, these things on American citizens. It's illegal without a warrant. But with Section 702 of FISA, they can get around the warrant process. And what's supposed to happen is that if they unmask you and it turns out you're an American, they're supposed to delete the entry because it was not collected in accordance with the Constitution. But what has happened, as we know, is that there have been over 258,000 illegal uses of Section 702 to spy on American citizens, mostly related to January 6th, but also some related to the George Floyd protests. So this is a bipartisan issue, and the American people need to demand their Fourth Amendment rights be respected, and anybody violating those rights needs to go to jail. It's that simple.
Well, thank you very much, Nate, for being on. Thank you for the advice. I know that we're going to have lots of questions, and I definitely want to have you back on. I want to respect your time today. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you for standing up for us as Americans when we didn't even know that we needed it, and we really shouldn't have to have it. But thank you for putting your life on the line so that we can all continue to try to still live free here in America. Any last words, closing words, movies, anything like that you want to make sure the audience does, aside from go to your show, make sure that they're following your show, because you do a great job with your show. You give a lot of information out there too about whenever you have guests on that you interview. So any closing information that we haven't given that you want to make sure that they watch, maybe a movie or anything?
Yeah, I was recently in a documentary called Finish This Fight, and folks can go to hear more longer form of my testimony in that documentary, finishthisfight.us/Cain, CAIN. What they'll find there is a guy by the name of Glenn Baker. He's a country singer, a friend of mine. He did this documentary, and he asked me to be in it. But he goes through and shares his story of injustice that happened to him, where he was falsely incarcerated. Eventually he got out, but he lost his home, lost his, most of his business, and lost his car. I think while he was in prison, he got an infection that cost him his cornea. And, this kind of stuff is happening all across America. We have a problem, not just in the federal justice system, but also in the state and local. And we need to do better. We need people who are going to respect the Constitution, who are in those positions of power. And there are a lot of other really great people that are in this documentary. You have Alan West, Ivan Raiklin. You have Craig, the Sawman Sawyer, who goes after pedophiles, and just a lot of great veterans. And that is what it's called, Finish This Fight, story of a pissed off American veteran. And it's really, it's what it's about. It's about we all fought for this country, but what we found out is that this country has turned into something that isn't what we fought for. And so we want to see change. And it's a very positive and uplifting documentary, even though it talks about a lot of really difficult things. Glenn has a way of adding humor to just about everything.
Yeah,
and he
Glenn's
does a really
awesome.
good job
I need to have Glenn on the show. Glenn actually lives here in Florida. He's actually a friend of mine. It's so funny that we have a mutual friend, and he's awesome, funny, hilarious, and a great singer. Oh my gosh.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
And that's how I met him. I had him on my show to talk about a music video that he was pretty amazing music video, very honoring of those veterans that have fought and died for this country. But one of the things that he's doing with this documentary, which I think is just really impressive, is that for those that rent this video, half of the proceeds are going to go to helping put a veteran who's lost his ability to walk into an exoskeleton so he can walk again. And I think that's pretty admirable. Yeah. So I would really encourage people to check that out. Again, they can go to finishthisfight.us/Cain. And it's really it's a great cause, and you'll get to hear more about my story as well. Yep, so I want to thank you for having me on, and God bless you for the work that you're doing as well.
Thank you so much, Nate. And I want to remind everybody that is watching, make sure that you go to Veterans for America First, and that's VFAF.us. Make sure that you sign up, you register, you become a part of your chapter. We are writing legislation. We are advocating for people like Nate to get into positions of power so that they can continue their work through the Trump administration, so that we can actually take our country back. So God bless you all. Thank you so much, Nate. And I hope that you'll come back on with me soon. And I'm going to call Glenn right now and get him booked on a show. So definitely. if you haven't already followed Glenn, like Nate said, make sure you go watch the movie. He's an amazing guy. He's a fun guy. Make sure that you follow Nate and follow all of our work. God bless you all. Thank you very much. And may the truth set us free, Nate.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Remember, take action. Take action. Don't let big tech win. Share this video with a friend now. Most importantly, do unto others as you would have others do unto you.